Food scavenging. So what you have to remember about this is that cats are opportunistic. So because they're hunters, they can't afford to wait until they get hungry before they go out and find their food, because then they won't have the energy they need to go and do the hunt. So they're hardwired to take food when the opportunity arises, just to make sure they've got enough to keep them going. So bear that in mind if you're leaving anything, or if in the past you have left anything that's easy for them to get to. So something that they could easily sneak out of the bin, something left on the kitchen side that just presented itself, and they were then able to take that food. Because what you'll find then is, because they've been rewarded by that food, that behaviour has then been reinforced, so they're more likely to think, oh, there's something in that bin, what can I do to get it out? And they'll sort of double up their efforts in trying to do that. So you might find that they actively try to get into the bin, or they're going up on the kitchen sides quite frequently to see what's available and to see if anything has been left out. And obviously if they are super enthusiastic and manage to get something, then those doubled up efforts are then rewarded. So they are super keen to get up there. So just bear in mind how the process might have started, and then be very careful about what you leave out. Also bear in mind that it depends a lot of the time on what their history is, what experiences they've had previously. So in my experience, not always, but a lot of strays retain that sort of drive to find the food, and they're super food motivated all the time because they've had an experience where they haven't been fed reliably, and they've had to take it into their own hands to find their own food. So they'll retain that sort of drive to do that. And I've found the same for cats. Some cats that have lived in massive multi-cat households, so those cats living in 20 or 30 cat households, sometimes there'll be enough food provided, but it's difficult to provide 30 or 20 bowls. So it might all be in one place or a couple of places, and it's just a free-for-all as to who can get the most food. And some cats might find they don't get enough. So those cats again can retain that drive to be like, I don't know if I'm going to have a reliable food source from now on, so I'm just going to eat it when it's there. And they retain that drive to do that. So that might explain why you're dealing with some of the problems that you are. So in terms of dealing with it, my general advice, if you can, is to free feed, but be careful, because if you've got a food motivated cat, you might find they just eat until it's gone, which is not ideal, because you'll just be providing loads and they'll be overeating loads. But if your cat regulates food themselves, then free feeding works well, because they're in control then of where they can get their food. They can come and go, they know it's reliable, and that sort of stress about, do I need to eat all this when it's here, will disappear. So you could try that. And also in terms of what you feed, it's not my remit to advise on diet generally, but what is your cat finding in the bin compared to what you're providing at home? So if they just have dry food and it's the same flavour and it's the same texture all the time, but in the bin there's a ham sandwich, then they're going to be much more motivated to get that. So try to vary up their food in terms of texture, flavours, how smelly it is, and just make it very attractive, and tick that box for them, to make it a bit more varied if that's the case. And if it's not an option to free feed, then little and often. So make sure there's not long stretches of time going past where they're not eating and they're thinking, I'm hungry, where can I get this food from? And taking it into their own hands. So little and often is more natural anyway, because they'll eat small meals throughout the day if they're naturally hunting. So rather than having a breakfast and dinner, split that into smaller portions and give it to them more frequently throughout the day. And finally, make sure they're not rewarded for stuff. So don't give them food from the countertops, and don't leave things easily accessibly from the bin. I have a separate food waste and a separate bin, so our food bin is kept well away from the cats, and they don't have the opportunity to do that, and they don't have that sort of foresight that that's there and they can go and do that. So yeah, be careful of what you're rewarding. Place their general food, their own food, in activity feeders. That can help as well. I know that a lot of you are doing that already, but just to make it a bit more time consuming and a bit more of an activity, rather than just like, I'm eating my food and moving on, and where can I do that again, it's a bit more of an activity and keeping them occupied. I think that's everything, but I know it's a difficult problem to deal with, but consistency is key, and making sure what do they need and how can you meet those needs in an appropriate way when it comes to feeding. Thanks, bye.